2, 1.
Welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, the radio chick, Annie Upellis. Join Annie on Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with an open chat room full of her regulars. And yes, you can even call in. Call 917-889-3675. That's 917-889-3675 to be a part of the action on the phone line. Not able to listen live? Not a problem. You can always catch Annie, the radio chick, and Southern Sense Talk Radio podcast in archives at southern-sense.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Southern Sense the right way.
All right, it helps if I unmute myself. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. The heck with it. Just go to our website. It's the name of the show. Put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, Annie, along with my debonair and intellectual and oh-so-handsome co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, thank God it's Friday, isn't it?
I am so happy it is and can't wait till this weekend. I'm just tired of the politics and everything and the crybabies out there. They should give us a break.
I know. And we're getting all these pundits out there saying, you know, Thanksgiving's coming up next week, and yes, and just next week, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. And they're saying, don't talk politics around the table when you're eating your turkey or someone's carving the turkey. You know, just go ahead and have an extra sip of wine, but don't talk about what happened and fundamentally change this nation back into a republic. No. You can't talk about it. Shh. They're going to upset people. Oh, man.
I know. I mean, people talk about anything else but politics, and I don't understand why. You know, because it impacts everything we do, even the size of the turkey, probably.
I mean, if it wasn't because of politics and persecution, the Pilgrims would never have come to this nation, to this country, and helped build this nation, I should say. You know, if it wasn't for them, would we be celebrating the America that we know? If it wasn't for their failed Marxist policies, would we have been then going towards the rights and liberties we now enjoy today? If their experiment in politics and colonization had not worked and causing them to switch paths, would we be the United States of America? So yes, politics goes straight into what Thanksgiving is all about. And to deny it is to deny us as Americans. So I'm not sorry. I will talk truth. I will talk religion. I will talk truth. And I will do it unashamedly. And if someone wants to try to come beat it up, come on, baby, because I'm locked and loaded.
That's two of us.
Oh, man. I want to welcome everyone that's in the chat room that's with us today and listening in the studio. You know, Blog Talk Radio has changed some of the things they've done online, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. So if you do want to join the conversation, you're listening in the studio, please, I'll remind you to press 1 on your dial pad. Otherwise, we will assume that you're listening in. Blog Talk Radio took that little voice message feature off, so they don't tell you about that, but the feature is still there. So, that said, we've got ourselves an exciting show here today. We've got two great guests. My dear friend Trevor Loudon is back with us today, and he's got his movie that's now documentary up on his website, The Enemy is Within, and I caught the trailer of it. I haven't seen the whole movie yet, but I'm going to con him into sending me the CD or the DVD. But we'll be talking with Trevor about his movie. And then we have Dr. Tom Harris on, and he is with, and let me make sure I get this, climatescienceinternational.org. And they are out there debunking the myths about climate change. They are climate scientists, and they go by science and logic and not the BS we hear in the media and by politicians. So it'll be a fun show. It'll be an exciting show. And I hope everyone hangs out and brings friends into the studio with us so we can have all the more fun. Trevor will be calling in at 1:15. That said, each and every show is dedicated to a fallen hero. And too many of these shows lately have been dedicated to a fallen law enforcement hero. And once again, we do this. We dedicate the show to Sergeant Alan Brandt of the Fairbanks Police Department in Alaska. His end of watch was Friday, October 28th of this year. And this is from the News Miner out of Fairbanks. The thrum of engines and the crunch of tires on the frosty road were the only sounds as a hearse carrying the body of Fairbanks Sergeant Alan Brandt made its stately way past a completely silent crowd. Hundreds of people stood for hours in below-freezing temperatures to honor Brandt, who died October 28th, Friday, as a result of wounds sustained when he was gunned down in a Fairbanks street 2 weeks before. Brandt's body was flown from Anchorage and arrived at a private hangar at the Fairbanks International Airport. Interior residents began arriving hours earlier, parking their vehicles in a solid line that stretched from a police roadblock to Dale Road westward to University Avenue. About 30 minutes after Brandt's body arrived, the hearse made its way down an access road before turning west onto Airport Way, where grim-faced law enforcement officers and firefighters waited to escort their fallen comrade to a local funeral home. Patrol vehicles from every local law enforcement agency fell in line, one by one, as the hearse passed by, forming a solemn procession that slowly made its way past the somber crowd. Brandt was shot 6 times early on the morning of October 16th while responding to a report of shots fired in downtown Fairbanks. His assailant took Brandt's service revolver and stole his patrol car after stomping Brandt's head as he lay bleeding on the road. A Good Samaritan rendered aid until emergency crews arrived and Brandt was flown to an Anchorage hospital for treatment. Brandt was shot twice in his right leg, once in his left, once in his right foot, and once in the chest, and a 6th bullet grazed his right knee. At least 2 pieces of shrapnel entered Brandt's left eye, and doctors decided to wait for inflammation and swelling to subside before he and died of complications. Hundreds showed up at the funeral. All right, I think I got knocked out. Are we still with me? Curtis, can you hear me? I think I got knocked out. Oh, great. All right. Well, Curtis. I got knocked out.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
All right. Can you hear me now? I hope you can hear me. If you can, put something in the chat room. Okay, great. I don't know where I left off, but Brandt was shot twice in his right leg, once in his left, once in his right foot, once in the chest, and a 6th bullet grazed his right knee.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
We're having difficulty. We'll get it back on soon.
All right, I'm back here, and I don't know. Blog Talk Radio keeps on kicking me off, and I apologize. It was very frustrating, and I'm sorry it messed up the dedication. Most of the gathered Thursday to bear witness to Brandt's final homecoming were asked for a comment. Many declined, saying only they wished to show their respect for Brandt's family and for law enforcement. Of those who did commit, Carlene Benson, whose family attends the same church as Brandt, said she flew up from Seattle to watch the procession with her mother, Florine Benson. Shane Holmberg, a lieutenant colonel with the Alaska Air Guard, said he and his fellow members of the 168th Wing came to honor a fellow officer and a fallen warrior who died in service to his country and community. Today's show is dedicated to Sergeant Alan Brandt of Fairbanks, Alaska Police Department. It is also dedicated to all those first responders out there who serve every day voluntarily to protect and serve, who don their uniforms never knowing if they'll be going back home to their families. It is also dedicated to the brave men and women in our military, those that have served since the days of this nation's founding, to those that are serving, and to those that will serve in the future. God bless them all, and we dedicate this song, Last Call, by Dave Bray. That was Dave Bray, Last Call, and you can actually find that on his website, which is Dave Bray USA, and check it out. You're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHI Media, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. Oh, the heck with it. You know what I'm going to say next. Just go to our website. It's the name of the show. Put a hyphen in the middle, southern-sense.com, and you can check out any of the players there or the chat rooms that are up there. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Radio Chick, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. And Curtis, we've got an exciting show today, so much to talk about, and hopefully Blog Talk Radio will not dump my Skype call again. But let's welcome aboard a friend of mine. He is one of the sweetest men that I know in this world, and he is a tireless patriot for his new nation, these United States of America. He's got a brand new movie documentary out called The Enemies Within. It is absolutely, I saw the trailer. I haven't seen the whole movie yet, but from what I saw, the little bit, it is going to be a rocking movie. So welcome aboard, my sweet friend, Trevor Loudon. Good afternoon, Trevor. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great, Anne. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to be here.
It's funny because I've got one of your fellow countrymen going to be my guest on Tuesday. I don't know if you know Nick Adams. And I had posted a review.
Oh, no, he's from Australia. Australia.
You're New Zealand. I apologize.
It's like calling you a Canadian. It's like calling you a Canadian, Anne. Okay.
Well,
but no, I do know Nick. I do know Nick. He's a good guy. Like, I very much admire Nick, so no problem there.
Well, the funny part is I was putting up a review on his book on an Amazon, and someone turned around and saw my review and says, well, you should have Trevor Loudon on your show. You should read his stuff. I had to crack up. And I said, he happens to be a very dear and sweet friend of mine. So, see, people are out there defending you. Here, they don't even know who I am. And they say, oh, you got to check this guy out.
Of course they do. Well, no, it's good to hear that word's getting around, and it's good to hear that these southern people, from South Carolina and even further south like Australia and New Zealand are making a difference.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I see more and more of you guys coming over here to the United States because it's one of the last bastions of freedom. And I would say this past election with Donald Trump is a pure example of how people are fiercely protective of their rights and liberties. It's not what the left thinks, that they can come in and just boondoggle us. What is your thoughts about what just happened here?
Well, look, exactly, and the warning for this was Brexit. We saw the people of England stand up. We were told, oh no, they're going to vote to stay with Europe, and they'll do that, and no, they voted against it. We've seen in Colombia they voted very narrowly to save their country from communism. In Brazil right now they're trying to throw off communism, and in Venezuela they're trying to do the same thing. So. There is a populist movement all over the world of people who are just sick to death of these left-wing internationalists who want to erase all the borders and destroy our national identities and wreck our constitutional forms of government and just tell us how to live our lives. And that's the sentiment that I think got Donald Trump into the White House. And long may it continue, I say.
All right, well, we already have a caller in on the line, and I want to just remind you that if you are listening in on your smart devices or phones or whatever, you want to join the conversation, you have to remember to press 1. Otherwise, if I see you in the studio, I'm going to assume that you're only listening in. Let me bring this person in because he happens to be a friend of the show's and a friend of yours also, Trevor. Bring back my former co-host, Cool Mike. Good afternoon, Mike.
Hi,
good afternoon.
Hello, Mike.
Always great to have Trevor on, and of course, hello to your co-host as well, Annie. Trevor, do you think, based on the fact that Colombia, the United States, and of course the Brexit vote, do you think this is a positive trend as far as the dominoes, where clearly people are basically saying we want our country back? And one of the surprising, I don't want to say surprising, but it appears to be leading the charge in all the countries are basically the union workers.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of the those Reagan Democrats, the union, the conservative grassroots union guys who are patriotic people and are just sick of seeing their jobs exported, sick of seeing the barriers come down, sick of seeing their country invaded, sick of seeing their wages driven down by illegal immigration. Yeah, it is. You know, it was the union workers who put Trump over the top in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania, all of those so-called blue states. So, yeah, absolutely. And you see that through Europe. You see it all over, you know, just common sense people who are just sick to death of this liberal, left-wing, progressive, internationalist garbage.
Well, Trevor, I think this happens at least 2 election cycles ago when we saw union people filing lawsuits because their dues were used for political parties, political agendas that was completely against what the union members' political beliefs were. They were saying, wait a minute, this union no longer represents me. You saw it inside the unions. And I think it's not so much the unions themselves that stood up with Donald Trump. It's the workers within the unions that I think that turned the tide.
Look, the top leadership of the union movement in America today is all communist. You know, it was taken, and this is why the rank and file members are rebelling. And we deal with this a lot in the movie, actually, because if you think about it, and here's some evidence, you know, 25 years ago, it was the unions who were leading the charge against illegal immigration. They had people on the border. They were constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegal immigrants because, you know, they were taking their jobs. They were driving their wages and conditions down. It's very logical. But then in 1994 and 1995, the communists under John Sweeney took over the AFL-CIO and totally flipped that organization from being pro-worker to pro-communist. And then they flipped their position on illegal immigration. Now the unions are leading the charge to legalize the illegals. And there's a very simple reason. The communist-controlled unions want the Democratic Party, which they control, to be a one-party state in America. And if they can legalize anywhere between 12 and 40 million illegals, knowing that they will vote 80% Democrat, that will give them a complete monopoly on power. That will give them a one-party state. That's why the communist-led unions are selling their workers down the river by promoting amnesty, because they have the goal of a one-party Democratic Party state controlled by the communists. And that's why you have rank-and-file union members rebelling against this, because they can see what these policies are doing to their country.
You know, it's funny because here you've got the average American guy, the Joe Blow that goes to work, and also you've got an H-1B1 visa worker or an illegal worker that is then hired in that person's place, and that poor person has to train that immigrant for that job. Yeah. And then they turn around and tell us, well, we've got to get more H-1B1 visas in here because we don't have enough skills, not people to fill these jobs. I was watching a farmer saying, well, I can't get my crops picked because now these H-1B1 visas, you got to pay them more than the minimum wage. But what about all the American workers sitting out there that could pick these crops? Why aren't you going after them?
Absolutely. And see, this is a race to the bottom because you've got illegal immigrant workers. Every farmer has to hire them to compete. So that drives the wages down of all the farm workers. So instead of hiring Americans for $15 an hour, they're hiring illegals for $8 an hour. And American workers are sitting on the dole or sitting in front of their TV all day long. Well, you know, sure there's a huge shortage of skilled labor in America, because for the last 30 years, industry has been so run down that the skill base has been lost. But that's no excuse for bringing in foreign workers. That's an excuse for building up American industry and getting the training programs going again, getting the apprenticeship programs going properly, getting that technical base built up. That's not, you don't need foreign workers to do that. You just need a commitment to American workers, which has been very sadly lacking by both the communist-controlled unions and the completely money-dominated Chamber of Commerce that sees nothing beyond the short-term profit.
Now, you had
Trevor,
mentioned...
I have a question, if I can. The Brexit vote, was that kind of a bunch of basically middle-class and upper-middle-class workers tired of funding lazy countries? What exactly was the politics behind pulling out of that? I certainly were glad they did, but I guess with the American media being so one-sided, you really don't get the true in-depth X's and O's of what exactly that was.
Well, I think it was a basic British nationalism. It was a fear of having to bail out the economies of Greece and Italy and Portugal, but it was also a huge influence was a desire to clamp down on Islamic immigration into the country, because if you've got open borders, you cannot stop Muslims coming in from the European countries. But if you are out of the EU, you can do that. You can secure your borders again. So a lot of it was the same sentiment as those who want to secure America's borders. When you're in the EU, you don't have borders effectively. So it was a British nationalism. It was a patriotism. It was an economic reality thing. But most of all, it was a nationalist impulse. I think let Britain be British. Let France be French. Let Germany be German. Let Italy be Italian. These are very old-fashioned ideas, I must admit, but they still are very, very strong in the British, in the British mindset.
Yeah, it's funny. Go ahead, Curtis.
Trevor, here in America, we know the left has been on this New World Order march for the longest time. How do you think Donald Trump's election results will impact this march? Do you think we can change path, change course?
Well, I think it's been a huge step in the right direction, but we cannot just sit back and hope for the best. Donald Trump's going to come under all sorts of pressure from all sorts of areas. He's not a perfect individual. He'll want to make deals. He's off on a great start, but he needs to be pressured now to actually pull America out of the United Nations, to get rid of NAFTA, to absolutely close the borders to illegal immigration, and I would say he has to deport those illegals that are here, something he's been backing off on recently, and he's got to be put back on track on that. So I'd say it's a huge step in the right direction, but it's only part of the way. It gives us some breathing space. It gives us a chance. We have to capitalize on these 4 years to make sure that America is rebuilt, America is sovereign, the Supreme Court is back under American control, the United Nations is gone, a whole bunch of other steps need to happen. But yes, it is a very good step in the right direction.
Well, now it looks like we're going to get a new head of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. And of all people, one of your favorite topics in your book, titled Enemies Within, is Keith Ellison. And you laid this out in your book so eloquently. What was this, 5 years ago you wrote about this? And you've updated the book every year?
Yeah, not quite that long, but yeah.
I mean, how many pages is it now?
There's a big section on Keith Ellison in the movie as well, because the movie, we also explore the Marxist-Muslim alliance, that it isn't just communism that's trying to take down America, it's the Muslim Brotherhood, which is working together with the communists and socialists. And Keith Ellison is a perfect example of this. He worked with the Maoists when he was a student. He worked with the Communist Party USA for years. He's written for their publication. He's held fundraisers in the home of Erwin Marquette, the head of the Minnesota Communist Party. He was elected with the help of Communist Party phone bankers. He set up he's the leader of the Progressive Caucus, which is basically the communists' avenue for injecting their legislation into your Congress. And he's also heavily tied to several Muslim Brotherhood fronts, terrorist fronts. and he has used his position in Congress to protect those fronts. One of them, the Muslim American Society, even paid for his election, for his trip to Mecca, his Hajj. So he owes them big time. And he was also part of the Muslim National Democratic Council, which was set up with Nancy Pelosi and several of your senators and congressmen and a whole bunch of Muslim Brotherhood supporters, which basically elected Tim Kaine to the U.S. Senate and helped to re-elect Barack Obama in 2012. So he is extensively tied to both the Communist Party tyranny and the Muslim Brotherhood tyranny. And now he's going to be probably the head of the Democratic Party. So what does that tell you about how far the Democratic Party has gone from the days of Harry Truman and JFK?
Yeah, but if we mention any of his Muslim Brotherhood connections were Islamophobic or were racist, but yet, in fact...
Well, sticks and stones may break my bones, Tough. He is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the parent of Hamas and Al-Qaeda. They are terrorist supporters. He's intimately involved with them, intimately involved with the communist movement. We prove it all in our movie. We lay it out, and there's nothing he can say about it other than just cast slurs because the case is well proven.
Well, then, would he be eligible to be kicked out of Congress if Ted Cruz's bill goes through? The Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act of 2015-2016, which Trump said he is going to resurrect, which will also outlaw CARE.
Well, look, it'll designate, and we promote this in the movie too, because it's this one law which shut down the Muslim Brotherhood infiltration into this country, because it would shut down CARE, ISNA, ICNA, Muslim Students Association, and people associating with them could find themselves in jail. So look, Allison is intimately involved with them, and we are very much urging Donald Trump to pass this legislation. We promote it in the movie because it's just essential. But see, the thing is this: when you're in Congress, there are no security checks, right?
Right.
If you want to work for the federal government, even drive a school bus, you need to be background checked. They will check out your family background, overseas travel, bounce checks, criminal convictions, political affiliations. But if you stand for Congress and serve on the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee, like Andre Carson, who is also a Muslim Brotherhood affiliate, and Luis Gutierrez, who is another Muslim Brotherhood affiliate who is on that committee, you need no background check, nothing, zero. So Allison, if that passes, Allison could quite likely find himself before the courts, but I doubt that you could actually kick him out of the Congress. But he certainly deserves to be on trial for some of the things he's done.
Man, there is so much work for Donald Trump to do, so much to unravel, because people don't realize how infiltrated the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE are in not just our federal governments, but our state governments and local governments. They're infiltrated our school systems. And unless it is a lot to rout out. And I can see the whole left going, oh, you're trying to get rid of half the nation. Well, half the nation is not Muslim to begin with. But the infiltration...
No, it's a very small percentage. But look, this is a national security issue, and you're right. They have infiltrated the education system. They're in the State Department. They're in the FBI. They're in the CIA. And I'm glad that Mike Pompeo has just been named as the new director of the CIA, because I think a good conservative like him will be kicking these people out pretty shortly. Look, the Muslim Brotherhood right now will be in absolute terror. Because if Donald Trump carries on with what he's doing, a whole bunch of them are going to be in jail, a whole bunch of them are going to be kicked out of the country, and their networks are going to be shut down. You will not believe the difference in America if this goes through. If he can pass the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act, and he seems intent on doing it, which is right now why the Muslim Brotherhood are working with the communists to do everything they can to disrupt Donald Trump, street riots, attacks on Steve Bannon, whatever they can to halt to intimidate the president. So we're heading for an interesting period, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you mentioned the attack on Steve Bannon, and here this guy was the editor for Breitbart, I think it was. But there was other people writing for the paper. So, everything that was put in the paper was not him writing or saying it, and yet they try to make it sound like that. Here this guy is a decorated veteran, someone that has a really good head on his shoulder. He has not a bigoted bone in his body. When you have people like Ben Shapiro or Pam Geller saying he's not, we've known him for years, he's not. And these two are Jewish. He's not an anti-Semite, but it is so easy to throw the name calling around. And of course, if the left says it, if the media says it, it's going to stick.
Well, see the left, Linsky and Lenin both said, always accuse your opposition of doing what you're doing yourself. Nobody is more racist or anti-Semitic than the left is in this country. Nobody is more bigoted than the left. But they will throw this at Steve Bannon while Keith Ellison gets kid gloves treatment for all his extreme associations and extreme statements. So the media is incredibly biased. And that's why it's good that Trump has taken them on head on and doesn't listen to their garbage. And the American people have proven in the last election that the majority of them don't listen to the left-wing garbage either. And this is a huge shock to their system. They thought they had the election in the bag. They thought they were going to roll on to setting up a one-party state in America. They were so close, and now it's been snatched away. And we've got to be so thankful for the miracle that we've been given, and we've got to be so vigilant and so hard-working to make sure this presidency is a success and that the actual subversion of this country can be hugely rolled back.
Yeah, it's funny because if anything were to happen to Trump and Pence becomes president, they have no idea how much more stringent it was going to be. Curtis, I just want to mention this article that was in today's paper, written by Rachel Zoll from Associated Press. And Trevor, you'll love this title because U.S. Jews grapple with the eruption of anti-Semitism. And in it, they say much of the bias originated from the alt-right, or the alternative right, a loose group espousing provocative, I can't even pronounce these words, and reactionary strain of conservatism. It's often associated with far-right efforts to preserve white identity, oppose multiculturalism, and defend Western values. Now, first off, I have no idea what this alt-right is, but it definitely is not conservatism. It's not even associated with conservatism. And white identity is fascism, has nothing to do with conservatism. What is wrong with Western values? And what is wrong with American nationalism and patriotism when it flies in the face of the damage multiculturalism has done to our nation? This is the left propaganda.
Well, it's completely the left propaganda, and there is an alt-right out there, and elements of it are anti-Semitic, and elements of it are white nationalist. But that's nothing to do with the constitutional conservatism that you and I would espouse. And see, the propaganda's out there. There's been increase in anti-Semitism since Trump was elected. There's been an increase in anti-Muslim incidents since Trump's been elected. All of it is completely bogus. Much of the Islamic charges come from the Southern Poverty Law Center, a notoriously left-wing organization. And when you delve their charges, it's all completely anecdotal. There's not one substantiated charge that's ever been to court. No names are named. It's just people have put on their website that they got offended. Don't even have their names on it. So it's all completely bogus. But this is a big narrative that's been picked up by the New York Slime and all those other organizations to basically denigrate the new president. All completely bogus. There's no grain of truth to it whatsoever. But that doesn't matter. It just serves the propaganda narrative. So, what we stand for is the Constitution. We stand for any American having the same rights as any other American, and being proud of this country and wanting this country to do well. And this is somehow racist or bigoted. This used to be the normal American attitude, and it still is for most Americans, much to the anger of the radical left.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned the Southern Poverty Law Center. CBS anchor Scott Paley was saying, hey, listen, it's all coming up about this with Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and so on and so forth. But what people don't realize is the Southern Poverty Law Center actually rivals Hillary Clinton's foundation there, and they raised over $300 million in the reserve fund, and it's become one of the most profitable charities in the country, and it has nothing to do with equal rights, justice, or anything else. It is the biggest bigoted smear campaign instrument that you could ever find in the United States.
It's a Marxist hit organization that attacks anybody who stands up for America, anybody stands up for the Constitution. It's a completely pro-communist organization. Yet it advises the FBI. It gets quoted all the time in mainstream media. And it's a completely fake, bogus, dishonest organization. Its statistics are completely unreliable, completely biased, yet because it's got a presence, it gets accepted. So people have to understand that they cannot believe what they see in the media, because the media relies on such scam organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center for its information. And what kind of narrative they're going to push.
No, the worst part is that the Southern Poverty Law Center president and CEO, Richard Cohen, was a member of the Countering Violent Extremism Workers Group of the Department of Homeland Security, which means he had access to classified information, and he may have been actually in violation of federal law because he used that information to smear conservatives.
Well, exactly, and this is the kind of reach these left-wing groups have. But the other very important point about that is, see, this whole countering violence extremism scam is something that is guiding the domestic and foreign policies of all your security and intelligence agencies. So all they are allowed to do is go after people that have actually committed a violent crime, which is only a very small proportion of the Islamic radical movement, the pro-Sharia movement. So all of the CARE and ICNA and ISNA and MAS, who all deserve intelligence scrutiny and should be shut down, are completely ignored, while all focus goes on the very tiny minority who actually commit illegal acts. Yet this whole network that supports those people who commit illegal acts goes completely untouched because of this countering violent extremism scam that people like Richard Cohen have helped to foist on your intelligence and law enforcement agencies. So that's another thing that has to change under Mr. Trump. It has to, look, for instance, when I came to this country, I had to swear that I'd never been involved in any fascist or communist organization that sought to overthrow the U.S. Constitution. Yet if you believe in Sharia law, as many Muslims do, not all Muslims, but many of them do, Sharia law is completely incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, if you are promoting it, you are seeking to overthrow the Constitution. Therefore, anybody who believes in Sharia law should be in the same category as those who believe in communism or fascism. They should not be allowed to come into this country, and if they are citizens, they should be monitored and they should be counted, because they are subversive organizations, effectively.
Yeah, I want to change this a little bit, because we have those protests, as the left calls it, protests, peaceful protests, which are far from that. And one of your gals on your website, Teresa Monroe Hamilton, wrote an absolutely great article about a Russian immigrant here to the United States that is an artist. He's got a great website. What the heck is the name of his website? Oh, shoot. Oh, the People's Cube. Yes, right. The poor guy was arrested for putting up posters, and they didn't tell him that he was putting up posters because putting the posters up in itself was illegal. No, he was defacing property. And he was using wheat paste, not crazy glue or anything else like that. He got arrested, handcuffed, thrown in jail, fined for $8,000 bail, and then he faces up to 5 years of federal time for putting up these anti-Hamas posters.
Well, you know, you look at the regular, you look at the regular riots that have been happening in this country for several months, from Black Lives Matter to the anti-Trump protests of earlier this year, and the anti-Trump protests since the revolution, since the election, and it should be the counter-revolution. So, and these people get treated with kid gloves. You know, they disrupt traffic, they break windows, they assault people, and virtually nothing happens. You know, in San Jose last year, these people were allowed to assault Trump supporters, and the police were told to do nothing because the San Jose police department was controlled by Democrats. Yet you have one guy who puts up some very legitimate posters in a university which are supposed to be all about free speech. Now, I can understand him getting a little rap on the knuckles, you know, I can understand that, but an arrested, handcuffed, $8,000 bail, 5 years potential jail, when these other people are getting nothing, that shows where law enforcement is. And incidentally, the policeman who arrested this gentleman was involved in LGBTQ seminars and was very much active in supporting, you know, one or two left-wing type of groups. So possibly this policeman himself has a little bit of an agenda.
Plus, they never read
how that develops.
Yeah. Plus, they never ever read him his rights, which means that the case should be thrown out of court.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's right, and maybe that was who knows? I don't know why they didn't Miranda him, but it just goes to show the incredible double standard that's operating in this country, where people can basically foment revolution on the streets, and a guy can put up some posters and gets hammered for it while these other people get nothing. So, yeah, I agree.
Well, we got a quick question in the chat room, because Kel, who is with Red Fox Radio, wants to know if you're still in New Zealand or are you now here permanently in the United States?
Well, I'm a permanent resident, but I will be, you know, spending a little time in New Zealand. Still got lots of family there, but yes, I can. I'm committed here for the next period of time, and eventually will become a citizen. But that takes a little bit of time. But I'm on the way.
Well, congratulations and welcome home. Go ahead, Curtis.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Trevor, the nations of the world used to look upon the United States as a country of strength, and its people are determined people, proud people, patriotic people. What is the vision or the world view of America when we have students out there protesting who need safe space and crying rooms and things like that? What are the thoughts of America then?
Well, it's sort of you've got a big base out there who still looks up to America and loves America, and they understand how the left propagandizes. They see it in their own country. Like older people in New Zealand love America because we were saved in World War II by your guys at Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. But, you know, the newer generation has been indoctrinated by the media. You know, America's the founder of all evil, and Ronald Reagan was semi-retarded, and George Bush was crazy, and, you know, and Donald Trump is the devil incarnate. So you have that to contend with. But basically, most freedom lovers in the world understand that we all do better when America is doing okay. You know, when When you're strong militarily, the world is more peaceful. When you're strong economically, the world is richer. When your constitution is strong, that helps us with our freedom fights all over the world. So, most sensible people around the world are rooting for America right now. They're very happy that you've got rid of Obama. They're happy that Trump is president, and they're looking to see good things coming. So there's a lot of goodwill out there. There's a lot of hope. And if America can really fulfill the chance that's been given to them, that's going to spark liberty revolutions all over the planet. But if America blows this and it goes back into socialism, that's going to be hard for all of us, because if America goes down, there ain't nowhere to run. There's nowhere to run.
Well, I think this is the first step in returning the republic to the people. And it is going to be a revolution, as you said, but it's a peaceful revolution on our side, where we are countering a violent revolution on the other side. And you see it in demonstration after demonstration, because there were 6 communists that were arrested for attacking Trump supporters, and the media said absolutely nothing. These idiots were from the Red Guard Austin, and violently attacked him at the rally in D.C. I mean,
the Red Guards Austin is a militant Maoist organization, which is allied to the Red Guards Los Angeles and the Progressive Youth Organization out of St. Louis, Missouri. Now, all of those organizations were involved in attacking Trump rallies before the election, and now they are back at it. So this is a very easily identifiable network of radical Maoists. There is also, look, I can go through all the protests that are going on right now, from Standing Rock up in the North Dakota Access Pipeline, which is being run by the Communist Party USA, to the Black Lives Matter disputes, which are being run by the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and these anti-Trump rallies, which have every communist organization you can think of leading them. If people say there's no communism in America right now, all they have to do is turn on the TV every night, because all of these riots, all of these demonstrations are completely 100% communist-led. No doubt about that whatsoever, and I can name the people involved in them.
Wow. Because we also have now that the anarchists are saying they want to disrupt the inauguration. It is constantly, you always see the violence on the left, and then the right is just saying, hey, listen, we just want our country to go back to normal. And everything is being done to prevent that normalcy. And as you said, it's a handful of people. But a lot of people are saying that they can point the finger directly at George Soros, where they can trace payments from him through Craigslist, payments for buses, payments to feed and clothe these people as they come into the rallies and different demonstrations. Will we ever see George Soros charged and behind bars?
Look, I would love to see that. See, a lot of people will focus on George Soros. All these rallies are communist-led, but George Soros, provides a lot of the money. Not all of the money by any means. The taxpayer provides a lot of it. The foundations provide a lot of it. And yes, Soros does. But if you think about, George Soros, his history is with the Russians. It goes back right to when he was a little Jewish boy in Hungary, and he was liberated by the Russians. He'd been working with the Nazis, but they let him out of Hungary. Went through Soviet-occupied Austria. A Nazi collaborator. He used to go around with his foster father, confiscating Jewish property for the Nazis. So you got to think, how would a Nazi collaborator be allowed to leave Soviet-occupied Hungary and Soviet-occupied Austria if you hadn't made a deal with the authorities? So I think you've got to go behind George Soros. You've got to look at who gives him his money, where it comes from. And I think you'll find he has a big, fat KGB file back in Moscow. And that's where we need to direct our attention, because the Black Lives Matter people are going to Moscow. They're going to the Palestine territories. This is an overseas directed attack. It was just revealed the other day that a Venezuelan diplomat, a communist diplomat from Venezuela, was in Chicago talking to people there about the protests against Trump. So it ain't just George Soros. This is Russia. This is Cuba. This is Venezuela. This is Iran. This is North Korea. And that's where we've got to direct our attention and stop these activists going to these countries and getting training and bringing back their ideas to subvert this country.
Well, now, if people wanted to find out about this movie and your book, they can go to the website, The Enemies Within Movie, and you've got packages in there now where you can have, what is that, for a movie showing? That someone can host it at their own party?
Just go to enemieswithinmovie.com. That's enemieswithinmovie.com. You can buy one DVD, you can buy 10, you can buy 100. A lot of people are buying multiple orders, but you can get a 10-pack, for instance. You get a discount. You can hold a little party in your home, sell the movies on, full price or whatever you want to do. But the key thing is we want several million people around America to see this, because I think it will shock them to the core. And we've got people all over the country holding these little parties right now. They're taking to their congressmen, to their state legislators, to their local police chiefs. It is going all over the country viral right now. But if you want to see it, just go to enemieswithinmovie.com.
Well, maybe I should have you come up for our January Tea Party meeting and have you play the movie and talk to people. That's an idea.
How late in January is it?
It's usually the third Monday of the month.
Yeah, I'm going to be back in the country at the end of January. But I'm going to be in the southeast around that time. So just send me an email and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, or I'll give just Regina a call. But Trevor, you've got a fantastic site. You also still have your blog that you have up there, the New Zeal blog, which is under your name, just trevorloudon.com. And people can read your articles, and you got a staff that is now working with you on the blog. Plus, they can check out the website. And you also have another book, the first one that you wrote, which was Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. See, I thought I had that book. When I went over my bookshelf, I could not find it. And I would have sworn that was the first one I bought from you. But I got the other one.
Yeah, it would have been.
So I don't know if I've either mislaid it or I just never got it from you or you owe it to me.
Oh.
That was a nice move, right?
Hey, I have a question. I have another question for Trevor, if I can. Based on your educated guess, here in America, how does this all play out? Do you think Trump caves to these people, or do you think he just waits his time for him to take the oath, and then what we actually see is a full-scale revolution in the right direction?
Look, I'm thinking it's going to play out well, and that the good people he just named, a very good man, as Pompeo, is the congressman from Kansas, as the new director of the CIA, and this guy's a Tea Party conservative. So he's named a lot of good people. Jeff Sessions is looking like he may be Attorney General. As long as it keeps up these appointments, we are going to have a counter-revolution, and it's going to be very, very good for America. So we have to. Trump is going to come under huge pressure, both nationally and internationally, to roll back this agenda. So we have to get active. The Tea Parties have got to revive themselves. All of the anti-communist movements of the last few years have got to get behind Trump and make sure his appointments are supported. The Supreme Court justices go through. Everything he wants to do is aided. And if he steps out of line on anything, he's got to be hit wrapped over the knuckles very, very shortly. So I think it's going to play out well if we don't go to sleep and we stay on his case and get behind the president. I think it could turn out very well, not just for America, but for the whole Western world.
Trevor.
But it takes effort on our part. We cannot go to sleep on this.
Trevor, do you think the Trump administration should still go after the Clinton Foundation?
Yep, absolutely. No.
Tom Harris here.
Yeah, Tom, it's Andy Bellis with Southern Sense. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right, it's the switchboard playing games with us. All right, I'm going to bring you on in just a second. We're leaving off with our last guest, Trevor Loudon, and you'll be on in just a moment, okay?
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Are not offences that you can be pardoned for. They cannot be ignored. And that will send a message right down the line that no one is above the law. And I think that's a message that Americans are just craving to hear. It won't be easy. There'll be a lot of grief involved, but I think it has to be done.
Yeah,
Well, Trevor,
I agree.
it has been a pleasure, Trevor.
Yeah.
I will be talking to you later on because I want to call you and Regina about something else later. So I'll speak to you over the weekend, and we'll see what we can work out with you coming up to South Carolina here. How's that sound?
Yeah. Just give me some dates, and we'll see what we can do.
All right. And
Okay.
I thank you so much. And check out his website, which is the enemieswithinmovie.com. Also his blog, which is trevorloudon.com. The movie is a great documentary. It is something that I think the rest of the nation does have to see. That said, we got ourselves our next guest with us. You want to remind everyone you're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media, Kinetic Hi-Fi, The Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. Oh, we're all over the place. Just go to our website, which is the name of the show, southern-sense.com. Put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. Check it out. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Radio Chick, and hopefully BTR will not kick me off again, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, I want to welcome on board Dr. Tom Harris, and he is with the ClimateScienceInternational.org. Good afternoon, Dr. Harris. How are you?
Yeah, hi. Actually, I'm not a doctor. I'm a mister because I have a master's in the field, but not a doctorate. I work with lots of people with PhDs, but that's not me.
Well, I promoted you. How's that?
Okay. Well, we have a team of about 25 scientists that advise me and the others in the International Climate Science Coalition, and they're leading experts from around the world, so I'm their mouthpiece, so to speak.
Well, you've got an interesting site, and there's so much going on about climate change. And everyone's talking about climate change this, climate change that, the EPA emissions, and there's so much misinformation out there. And right now, with Donald Trump as the president-elect, he's talking about canceling the Paris Accord. Just so that people know what it is and why it should be canceled, tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. In 1992, George H.W. Bush actually signed, along with a number of world leaders, what's called the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It was at the Rio Summit in Rio de Janeiro. And that was the origin, really, from the United Nations point of view, of all of these climate agreements. The Kyoto Protocol, for example, the Paris Agreement, they're all protocols to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So you can actually get out of things like the Paris Agreement, but it's pretty tough if you do that directly. And in fact, if people go to pjmedia.com, which is a website out of Los Angeles, has 5 million viewers a month, so it's fairly well trafficked. I have a piece at the very top of their webpage, at their homepage. It's called "How Trump Can Completely Withdraw the U.S. from UN Climate Deals." So people can read all about this, exactly what I'm about to tell you. And it turns out that in the Paris Agreement, there is a clause that allows you to withdraw. The trouble is, it says that you have to wait for 3 years from the date on which the Paris Agreement came into force, which was just a few weeks ago on November 4th, and then the withdrawal will not take effect until a year later. So what that would mean is if you use the normal mechanisms to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, it's the very end of Donald Trump's first term as president when the U.S. would be out. So there'd be 4 more years of fighting and billions of dollars wasted, so it's obviously not a good strategy to do that. But because these treaties are all based on the Framework Convention on Climate Change, the thing that George Bush signed in 1992, we also go by those rules. Those are the foundation rules for all UN treaties. And it says exactly, and I'll read it to you right here. It says, any party that withdraws from the convention, okay, that's the thing signed in 1992 on which Paris is based, shall be considered as having also withdrawn from any protocol to which it is a party. So since the Framework Convention on Climate Change came into force back in 1994, it took a couple of years for it to actually be ratified. 3 years later, it's 97. So any time from now on, we can announce our withdrawal, and then it would take in force in 1 year. So what that really means is if they get out of the Framework Convention, they're immediately out of the Paris Agreement as well.
And it's that easy as that, because you're hearing everyone say, no, Obama's going to make sure it's permanent, but this has not been voted on by the Senate at all, so it's not an enforced treaty with the United States, is it?
Well, that's right. In fact, I was reading my World Book Encyclopedia, American Encyclopedia from a while ago when I was a kid, and it had the rules about treaties, and it says that treaties have to be agreed to by a 2/3 majority of the Senate. Now, it's interesting because, as I explained in my article in PJ Media, in 1997, the U.S. Senate voted 95-0 against accepting treaties like the Paris Agreement. Okay, what they said is that, I'll read it right here. The U.S. should not be a signatory to any agreement regarding the FCCC which would mandate new commitments or limits to reduce greenhouse gas emissions unless the agreement also mandates new specific scheduled commitments for developing country parties with the same compliance period. Okay? And that's the thing that people don't seem to realize is that all treaties based on the Framework Convention on Climate Change, which Paris is, which the Kyoto Protocol is, all those treaties have, because they're based on the FCCC, they also take into account what is called Article 4. Okay? Article 4 is very interesting. It says this, and this only applies for developing countries. It doesn't apply to us. It says economic and social development and poverty eradication are the first and overriding priorities of developing country parties. Okay? Now think about that. If you're telling the world that you're pulling people out of poverty is more important than greenhouse gas emission reductions, then do you think they're going to turn off their cheapest form of power, which is coal? They're not going to do it. Okay, that's very clear. And in fact, it's interesting, the president of the Philippines, who's a bit of a bad boy these days, but he gave us a preview as to what we should expect when, back in July, he said this. He said, "You are trying to stymie our growth with an agreement. That's stupid. I will not honor that." So, we see that. And the Chinese have said the same thing, too. I mean, in Peru in 2014, they cornered the Chinese negotiator, Su Wei, and they asked him, would you be prepared to renegotiate the FCCC? For example, to take out this business about developing countries having an out clause that developed countries don't have. And his answer was no. His government's position is to reinforce and enhance the FCCC. That's what he said, not to rewrite it. So the bottom line is any treaty that's based on the FCCC as it's currently written violates this 95-0 resolution that was passed in the Senate. It was called the Byrd-Hagel resolution, and I read that to you. And of course that's why Bill Clinton never submitted Kyoto to the Senate for approval, and that's also why Obama has not submitted the Paris Agreement. Instead, he's trying to convince Americans that it's not really a treaty, which, up here in Canada, we kind of look at with, everyone here calls it a treaty, everyone in Europe and the rest of the world, but it's not a treaty, so he can just have an executive action to approve it. Well, that's really a sleight of hand. And I honestly think that what Trump should do is, besides explaining the very dubious science that underlines the UN's climate change concerns, he should also say, look, the Senate, including the Democrats, this was even sponsored by a Democrat, Senator Byrd was a Democrat from West Virginia, they've already said this kind of treaty is not on. And so Obama had no business ratifying it on the part of the United States.
Yeah, it sounds like they took the same page from the Paris Accord as what they did with the Iran agreement. It's not a treaty, it's just an agreement. Just what is.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe it's an agreement between Obama and the rest of the world. So I guess Obama has to reduce his greenhouse gas emissions, but the U.S. doesn't. Maybe that would be one interpretation. So he can't fly or drive anywhere from now on.
Did he ever really drive? You know, that's a good question.
Well, apparently when he goes, I just read this recently, but when he goes to places where there's problems with security, following his Air Force One is a transport aircraft carrying armored cars and everything. So, I mean, it's very expensive. You know, I could not understand, actually, from up here in Canada, how President Obama could campaign for Hillary on the taxpayer's dime. I don't quite get that. That doesn't sound right to me, that he should be lugging around all these armored cars and everything and security agents while he's campaigning for somebody in the election. That doesn't seem right.
Well, because of who we have for the Attorney General and who's in the Department of Justice, he's not going to be prosecuted because the very same act they were accusing Comey of violating when he was talking about Hillary Clinton and her emails and the investigation is the very same act this president has violated time and time again by campaigning for other candidates on the taxpayer dimes. He is an executive. He is a paid executive in the executive branch, so he violates the law.
Yeah, so I mean, he should be, leading the country. He should be out there doing the things that you're paying him for, not to be campaigning for Hillary.
Yeah. Now,
I guess that's water under the bridge, I guess.
I think that's one of the reasons why Comey never pressed the issue with Hillary, because somewhere I think Obama would have came up, and he would have to have gone after the president, and I think he didn't want to do that.
Oh, yeah. But, I think Trump has got really some very strong cards to play here. And in particular, a 95-0 Senate vote on a Democratic resolution. I mean, he really should use that. Obviously he should also say that the science is all over the board. The idea that we control the future of Earth's climate is pretty far-fetched. And I do think that's important to bring up. But I think he should also point out that, this violates the spirit of the Senate's resolution.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned up what the mission statement of your organization is, which is the climatescienceinternational.org. And I have to tell you, when AJ and the others started sending me your promotional material around, I started looking at it and going, wait a minute, are they sending me a climate change nut? And it took me a little while to wade through everything. Otherwise, I would have had you on sooner. But because of the election season, I had gotten so swamped with other requests. So I said, let me wait until after the election. I can sit down and have a reasonable conversation with this man and truly understand what you're talking about. And I was so pleasantly surprised to see the stuff that you have on here. Now, I'm a child that graduated from high school in the 70s. So I remember when Nixon formed the EPA and, being dyed in the wool, born in the cradle, conservative from day one, I kind of was wondering what the whole thing was about. But then again, being a teenager in the 70s, of course I had the Earth shoes, which were the most uncomfortable shoes possible. So I was reading through this and I was saying, why didn't I have this information in front of me back then? I mean, how long has your website been up?
Yeah. Well, our website's been up, I guess, since 2008. That's when I started with them. It's interesting. Our group is nonpartisan. We actually have scientists that are socialists in our group, and this is where we're trying to break through. Right now, the climate issue has become a left versus right issue, but it really shouldn't be. I mean, when I was in Copenhagen, I spoke to the Ethiopian Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, and he pointed to the TV screen that showed all the protesters outside, and he said, Tom, those people are crazy. And I said, what do you mean? I said, don't you think that we're causing dangerous climate change? Because I hadn't told him my position. He said, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. He said, but they're all protesting to try to stop what might happen in 50 years. My people need help today. With wells and electrification and all sorts of things. And he said, but this whole conference is about trying to stop what might happen someday according to certain computer models. And he said, this is crazy. You're putting more value on the lives of people who haven't been born yet than our people now. And that's when I got home, I actually checked out the statistics, and it turns out that there's about $1 billion a day being spent on climate finance. And of that, only 6% goes to helping people now. All the rest goes to wind turbines and carbon trading and all sorts of things to try to stop the climate from changing for the distant future. So I think it's pretty unethical, and I don't think it should be a left right wing issue. I think that it's stupid. It's just stupid.
Well, I because I'm an activist, I am a Tea Party leader, as well as doing the radio show and involved in my political party here. I look at a lot of this stuff that we also do locally. And we had this where they wanted to open up the offshore drilling off the eastern seaboard here. And I went out there with my signs, pro-drilling, all the reasons why drilling is good here and now. The number of jobs that would increase, the economy that would increase in the area, the tourism and everything else that would show up. And yet the other side's voice, for some reason, is just louder. People are afraid to go out there and fight for an ideal because they're afraid of being slapped down. So an organization like yours is so important to show the sensible, logical side of the issue. I mean, I even got into...
Well, some of our scientists even get death threats. The trouble is the media have made it so politically correct that in Canada it's even much worse than in the United States. I write articles and send it to, say, 40 or 50 newspapers, and I'll be lucky if I get one publishing. In the United States, I might get 5. So, there is a voice on the other side in the U.S., but in Canada and Europe, and in fact most of the world, climate change deniers, as they wrongly call us, we're just people that won't be listened to. And when we point out the statistics, we show that all the extreme weather records for most of the American states, they're in the 1930s. They're not today. And so what? What's causing today's extreme weather? Well, the bottom line is there's probably no increase. It's just there's a lot more people to observe it with cell phones, and a lot more damage occurs because there's a lot more things to break than there was 100 years ago.
Well, there's some stuff going on up in the chat room. I want to thank everyone that's participating in the chat room because Gulf Dogs writes, we need to give the Democrats the CO2-free chambers to live in which Bigfoot writes wouldn't work. There would be new CO2 every time they exhaled. I wonder if they even realize that. But that's one of the things you point out. CO2 is not a pollutant. And matter of fact, without CO2, we wouldn't have half the ecology around us.
Well, it's right. And in fact, it's the elixir of life. I mean, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It's an invisible, odorless gas that's essential for plant photosynthesis. So, one of the things people don't realize is we're near one of the lowest levels of CO2 in Earth's history. It's true that it's gone up 30 or 40% in the last 100 years, but we're very close to the lowest level that you can actually have plants survive. There were times in the past, 440 million years ago, for example, when CO2 levels were 1,300% of today's levels. Okay? And actually it's interesting because at that time the Earth was in the middle of what's called a cold house period, which was much colder even than the ice ages. And so when you look at the geologic record, there really is no correlation between carbon dioxide and temperature. So, the whole theory of CO2-induced warming is highly questionable and probably wrong.
Yeah, because climate is constantly changing. Whether you've got La Nina, El Nino, or the shifting of the solar patterns, and the sun has the greatest effect upon our climate than people realize. A simple solar flare in the 1900s knocked out the start of electricity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We have some scientists that work out of the Pulkovo Observatory in Russia near St. Petersburg. Dr. Abdusamatov, it took me a while to learn how to say that. But what they do is they study the sun and they study the Earth's climate and see how well they relate. And they say they're very closely related. They say, our CO2 is warming the planet a little bit, but the effect of the sun is much more influential. And that's a concern because they forecast that around 2040, we're going to see what they call a grand solar minimum, when all the various cycles of the sun bottom out. And the last time that happened, it was very cold on the Earth. So, I'm personally in Canada here. I'm hoping they're wrong. But I think the bottom line is that if we don't even really know if it's going to get hotter or colder, then all of these forecasts about keeping temperature to within 1.5 degrees, I mean, it's just ridiculous. We don't even know if it's going to get hotter or colder. And so, the UN treaty that they're talking about right now, I mean, they just put out a paper, for example, and it's on Global News here in Canada, and I'll read you the headline. It says, Earth on track to heat up to devastating levels by 2100, scientists say. And the first line is, if humans continue on living as they do now, Earth's temperature will warm by a devastating 5 degrees Celsius by 2100. Well, hey, I mean, how do they know that? They couldn't, I mean, none of the computer models that were used to forecast climate over the last 30 years has come even remotely close to forecasting what actually happened. And yet they're going to use these models to forecast to the year 2100. It's just so stupid. Yeah, I mean, Roy Spencer and John Christie, they both use the satellite data to show temperature up and down, and they show that essentially, aside from spikes here and there hasn't really been any warming since about 1998. And in that time period, there's been a 10% rise in CO2. So even in the short-term record, it doesn't seem to be happening. Okay, and in fact, it's funny because after I had a piece published in the Washington Times back on Tuesday, talking about how Trump can, how he really has to get out of these different agreements, and how we really have to hold his feet to the fire too, or he might change positions again, because he did used to be on the other side. Back in 2009, he signed an open letter to President Obama trying to save the planet from climate change. So we have to keep up the pressure, otherwise, because you can be sure the enviros will. I mean, the very day after the election, Greenpeace had a big announcement in white letters on a black background on their homepage saying, we together are stronger than Donald Trump. And you're seeing this on all the enviro pages. They're getting ready for all-out war. Okay, so if people on our side are not strong as well, I could see it becoming pretty tough for Donald Trump to stay on his climate realist side.
Yeah, and then we have the problem with the EPA and the new regulations that is actually causing us higher electric bills. And now you have people such as elderly and the poor that can't afford the heat in the winter. They can't afford the oil because the oil production is down. They're hurting people today for something, as you said, may happen 50 years in the future. The EPA is one of the biggest job killers here in the United States.
Yeah. And, if you want a preview of what's coming to the U.S., take a look at my province here in Canada. I live in Ontario, and in 2002, we had a booming economy. We had the cheapest electricity rates in Canada, and our electricity was 25% from coal, which is fairly substantial. It was a quarter of our electricity. But the government decided that we were going to lead the world on climate change, okay? And that, even though we only represent 0.5% of world emissions, but we were going to lead the world. And so we turned off all our coal stations. We now get 0%. And get this, our electricity rates are 318% higher than in 2002. So, yeah, if you want to quadruple your electricity rates, get rid of your coal stations, save the planet.
Well, the funny thing is, when I moved into my home here in South Carolina, the electric bill was like $125. Now in New York, we were paying close to $300 for electric bill, and then heat was separate.
Oh yeah.
Down here, my HVAC does my heat, air conditioning, the house. The electricity is everything here, and yet it was half of what I was paying in New York. Now I get my new electric bill, and they said, the rates have risen, and now your electric bill is back up over $300. And that is in just a 15-year time frame. So, the EPA has been pushing it higher and higher and higher.
Well, it's interesting that, New York only gets 4% of its electricity from coal, and largely for that reason, it has the third highest electricity rates in the United States. South Carolina is about a quarter. Okay, so at least you're getting a good chunk of your electricity from coal. But if they do what Obama wants, and this is of course supposedly to reduce carbon pollution, as he calls CO2. In fact, believe it or not, in the Clean Power Plan, even in the official document, they call it carbon pollution. I mean, that's sort of like right out of 1984. War is peace. I mean, it's just completely insane. And the fact that more people don't point this out is really too bad, because anybody who doesn't know much about the field is going to say, well, of course we should reduce pollution, And so, in fact, in Canada, they just did a poll recently showing how the slight majority of Canadians want to see a tax on carbon pollution. Well, of course, because most people don't know the difference between carbon dioxide and carbon pollution, and it makes sense to reduce pollution.
Yeah, but the second you say carbon, bad.
I noticed you.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah.
Okay. I know this may sound in the realm of sci-fi, but I've just been curious all these years. We have a super volcano in Yellowstone Park. If that thing blows, how will that impact our climate? And are we prepared for something like that?
Yeah, it very much depends on the kind of volcano it is. If it puts out a lot of soot and ash, it can cool the earth for years. In fact, Pinatubo in the Philippines did exactly that. They had a year with no summer in the northern parts of North America and Canada. In Ottawa here, believe it or not, in those years, we had 1 year where, in fact, the snow never left the woods in Ottawa. So it very much depends on the kind of emissions that are coming out. If it is soot or ash, and it is really a lot, like Pinatubo and other, large volcanoes in history, you can see a direct effect on the Earth's climate in the form of cooling. Some people say that the CO2 emitted from volcanoes is greater than humans. We don't really know, and if that were the case, then you could claim that volcanoes were a warming agent. But we don't really know, and the reason is that most of the carbon dioxide from volcanoes doesn't really come from the central crater. It comes from what are called fumaroles, which are cracks in the ground, many, many miles, up to many miles away from the central crater. And so you have CO2 being emitted from the ground over very large areas. And some scientists, I have a friend in Sweden, for example, who studies them, he says that when you add it all up, it is very significant to the climate from all these fumaroles. But others just look at the central crater and say, no, in comparison with humans, it's not a lot. But I think the bottom line is we really don't know. We do know, though, that the cooling is a real effect if you get certain kinds of emissions.
Well, it's funny because I remember when Mount St. Helena went, and the following winters in New York were extremely bitter. It was some of the highest snowfalls we had in a long time. Yeah. So, you're the scientist. I'm just a talk show host.
Certainly that's the cooling effect. Yeah, that's because of the ash and the soot. There is such a thing as carbon pollution, and that is soot. Okay, so when Obama talks about we should reduce carbon pollution, in a way he's right, except that he's assuming everyone thinks that that's carbon dioxide. I mean, carbon pollution, which is what you see in China, because of a lot of soot from their power stations, it really is a problem. But that's not carbon dioxide, I mean, calling carbon dioxide carbon pollution, or even just calling it carbon, makes about as much sense as calling water hydrogen, okay? Because think of it, water is H2O. If you knock off the O, you've got hydrogen. Carbon dioxide is CO2. Knock off the O, you've got carbon. So even calling it a carbon tax is a mistake. And unfortunately, even people on the right do that all the time. I'm always after them, saying, don't call it carbon tax, call it a carbon dioxide tax, because otherwise it sounds like it's a tax on soot, and ash and things like that. So, I mean, the language has been totally distorted specifically to improve the chances of people being, sucked in by the climate scare. Saying things like climate change is real, scientists agree. Well, any scientist who didn't think that climate change was real should go back to grade school, because, I mean, if it weren't for climate change, I'd be sitting under 2 miles of ice right now where I am. So thank God for climate change.
Well, I love it when they started taxing bovine and ovine flatulence. And my answer to that was,
Yeah.
why don't we harness it and turn it into combustible fuel for our cars? Because you can run automobiles and trucks on methane gas. So,
yeah. And it's interesting because in a lot of parts of the United States, they're saying that you can replace coal with methane, with natural gas. And there's a problem there. I mean, methane is like a super fuel. I mean, you can use it for transportation, you can use it for cooking, for heating, for all kinds of industrial processes. It's a really fabulous fuel. You shouldn't waste it on baseload power generation. You should use coal for that. I mean, the United States is the Saudi Arabia of coal. You have more coal than any other country, and yet because of the climate scare, you're switching over to natural gas. And the trouble is, of course, we'll eventually use up our natural gas on something that we should be using, coal for baseload power. I mean, it's the cheapest. And with the right pollution control devices, we can, in fact, use it very cleanly.
Yeah, there is clean coal plants that do exist, and they run where you wouldn't even know you had a coal plant next to it unless you look in the horizon. But people are also pushing all this other new renewable energy, like solar panels and the wind turbines. And there are actually an entire wind turbine field in Hawaii, and I think the other one is in either Arizona or New Mexico, that is just sitting fallow. It's just unable to produce the electricity needed.
I don't understand why people on the left don't understand what's going on here. I mean, not only do they kill millions of birds a year, in fact, my daughter and my wife was in Scotland last year, and they're going to make the Scottish eagle extinct. Not my daughter and wife, but but the wind turbines, because they're putting them in the passes, in the valleys where the Scottish eagle soars, and they wipe them out. I mean, these eagles, they can see things that are stationary, they can avoid them, but they're often hit by moving blades. And these turbines are incredibly big. I have a friend that lives in West Lincoln, Ontario. She doesn't mind me using her name. You can look her up, Shelley Correa, and she moved to the countryside to give her son Joey a nice peaceful environment because he had various physiological problems that were affected by noise and confusion and things like that. Well, the government announced they were going to put a 62-story wind turbine only half a kilometer from their house, okay? And, of course, the doctors of Joey and the advisors that Shelley had said, this is terrible, you can't do that. But they're doing it anyways. And people are affected by these wind turbines. They produce what is called infrasound, okay? It's very low-frequency sound that goes right through buildings and right through your body and everything else. And you get this thump, 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 24/7 of these wind turbines when they're operating, of course. I mean, sometimes it's interesting, if the wind is too strong, they have to feather them. Otherwise, it'll break them. Of course, when the wind's not strong enough, they don't turn at all. But all the time that they're turning, they are bothering people, for miles and miles around, and really serious problems. This isn't just, giving people a headache. It's really serious health issues. And yet the left seem to feel, oh, no, we have to stop global warming, so we're going to put in more of these monstrosities. So Ontario has got something like 3,000 of these 62-story turbines being built all over the province. And, of course, as I said, we're trying to replace coal with wind turbines. It's completely ludicrous. In fact, it's interesting, Howard Hayden, who's a professor of physics, just retired from University of Connecticut, he pointed out that if you take a coal-fired jurisdiction and you try to replace them with wind turbines, you can't close any of the coal stations because when it's not windy or when the wind's too strong, you have to have a backup power source for 100% of your power. So you can't turn off the coal stations. You have to leave them on idle. And when the wind is pushing the turbines, and on idle they produce a lot more pollution. So the net result is that you spend billions on wind turbines, you can't close any of the coal stations, and you produce more pollution. Like, it's completely ludicrous. But you see, I think the main reason why this is happening is because the media have decided that this is a left-wing cause that they're going to support. No matter what the data says, no matter what the engineers or the scientists say, they're just going to keep pushing it. I mean, the LA Times said point blank that they would not even publish letters to the editor that questioned the climate scare. They even said that. Okay? So, I mean, when you have major media outlets that are taking sides, and often they're completely ignorant. I mean, I talked to the editor of one of Canada's leading newspapers and asked him why he didn't show at least both sides of the issue of climate change. And he said, oh, well, we agree with David Suzuki. I said, well, that's very nice, but do you have anybody on staff who even has a Bachelor of Science so they can even understand what the scientists are saying on both sides? And he said, well, no. So I said, well, then why do you only show one side? He said, well, don't quote me personally. And, of course, I'm not quoting him personally. He said, our advertisers wouldn't like it. And so I went home and I looked at the paper, and sure enough, he's got Prius and Canon Printing and other companies saying, you know, buy our products, we reduce greenhouse gases, we're helping stop climate change. And, you know, they'll spend $12,000 for a full-page color ad. The last thing they want is a scientist on the other side saying it's a bunch of bunk. So yeah, it's financially driven, not just to sell media, but also because it sells advertising.
You know, there's so much bunk that's going on the left. You know, at one point, my husband and I were looking to get off the electric grid, and we started looking into solar panels. And what I started to learn about solar panels scared the bejesus out of me. Because by the time you reap the cost it takes to install it on your home, on your property, it takes you close to 20 years to get that money back. And by the time that 20 years happens, you've got to replace all the panels. But, oh, wait, the panels are made out of toxic materials, so you cannot get rid of them. So what are you going to do with the old panels? So now you have toxic stuff on your property. It's toxic stuff on your roof, leaching into your house. Really?
Yeah, well, in fact, it's interesting. Some of these energy sources, they call them N-O-N-E, which means negative on net energy. In other words, when you actually calculate how much energy it takes to make them, and then how much energy it takes to dispose of them, you know, because if they're toxic, you can't just throw them in the landfill, that it actually eats up more energy than it ever produces. And that's the case, of course, in a lot of Canada, because in the case of solar power, you know, the sun's very low up here, so you don't really get that much solar power. You get places like the middle of Arizona, okay, that's where solar power would be worthwhile. But you're still stuck with the toxic problem. You know, it's quite hilarious, Annie, because when they, you know, China's a major exporter of wind turbines. Guess how they make their wind turbines? Guess what power source they use to make wind turbines?
Coal.
Exactly. You know, brought to you by coal. We're going to help you replace coal by using coal to make wind turbines. Oh, that's brilliant. So, yeah, a lot of this is just it's hilarious, actually. I mean, I think that the appropriate reaction when Obama gets up and talks about reducing carbon pollution to save the planet, the appropriate response is laughter. I mean, it's just so stupid. It's hard to believe that any country would ever, you know, get rid of their best source of power, would ever spend billions on this, and people actually believe it.
Well, you know, what I love is the people that have these new battery-operated cars, and it's like, I'm helping the environment because I'm not using oil products. All right? Wait a minute. You still have to put oil in the engine. Name me a single part of that car that was manufactured without petrochemicals. You cannot. Name anything in your life, including your organically grown vegetables in your backyard, that was not grown using some item created with petrochemicals. Now, try to take an iPad and cell phone away from your kids because they're chock full of petrochemicals. What about your shampoo, your soaps, your oils? Your makeup. Tell
well,
also,
not to
wear lipstick.
Where do you think they get the nickel from to make the batteries? I mean, it's mined largely in Sudbury here in Ontario, and then they ship the nickel to Japan, using oil, of course, to get it there, to make the batteries, and they ship the batteries back to the United States to put in the cars. So I don't know if there's a net saving of energy or oil in that case either. You know, we challenged our environment minister here in Canada to show us that there was a true energy saving by moving over from incandescent light bulbs to compact fluorescent. And of course, compact fluorescents are not a nice product, really. I mean, if you break them, it's like you suddenly have a dangerous spill in your house. But also, I mean, they put out a crappy sort of light quality. They're what they call cool white, which has no red or orange. So it gives a lot of people headaches. But regardless, we asked him, when you include the cost of making them, which is much more energy intensive than making an incandescent bulb, and you count the cost of disposing them, because you can't just throw them in the ground like a normal light bulb. You have to properly recycle them. Do you actually save energy? And he never answered. So we were chasing him. We sent registered letters, because they were bringing in legislation making these light bulbs illegal, and so you couldn't buy them anymore. And so we all have to go to CFLs. And finally, somebody inside the party admitted to me, well, the opposition were going to bring in a independent members bill to do this, and we wanted to beat them to the punch. So, no, they never did any analysis. They don't know if it really saves energy, but we wanted to get the green credentials in the media. It's happening everywhere. It's not just in the U.S., it's happening everywhere.
Well, it's funny because here they got now the fluorescent bulbs are being outlawed left and right. But little secret out there, people, listen to me. If you want, I know of a website you can go and still get the incandescent light bulbs. I had cases of them. I bought them online. They are stocked in my garage. So whenever I need a 60 watt, 75 watt, 100 watt, I got it stored. So I said,
yeah. Well, I think the real revolution is going to come when LEDs are cheap enough. Because they don't use very much power. They're, when they're cheap enough, when they can make them cheaply, they can't really yet. They're still too expensive. That's when we're going to see a movement away from, normal light bulbs. But until then, they're still the best source. I have one right now on my desk, over my head. I guess I must be very anti-environmental.
Oh, man, your website is so fantastic. I want to give it out again, climatescienceinternational.org. And people can follow you up on Twitter. It's your name, Tom Harris, followed by the initials of your organization, Tom Harris, ICSC. I managed to do that without screwing up. I'm doing pretty well today. Yeah.
And people should also check out pjmedia.com, and they'll hear everything I was telling you about the way to get out of the Paris Agreement.
Well, I've been putting that up in the chat room, but I will add it onto the show description later on, because the majority of people that listen to the show listen to the podcast in the archives later on. And as you heard me earlier say, it goes out in all these different other areas, so people can download it from Twitter, Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes. It's all over the place. So it'll be out there, and people will find out who you are. And I'm so sorry I didn't have you on sooner, because I really am enjoying this. There's so much to talk about. One of the things I got into a little bit of a discussion with my congressman. I've got him, people know I got him on speed dial. I text him whenever I got something to talk to him about. And he was against the offshore drilling. And I don't know how much you know about offshore drilling, probably a ton more than I do. But I went one-on-one with him, and I said, listen, you're opposing it because of these sonic cannons. But the science they're using to justify not using these sonic cannons is from the 1970s. What they're using now are far better. As a matter of fact, they use them off the coast of Africa constantly, and we don't hear of these mass strandings of sea creatures or whales or anything else. You don't hear of mass strandings. You would hear about it if these things were bad. So why do you think they would be bad here? And furthermore, these platforms, oil platforms, gives you tourism because people come out there because fish use it as if it's a coral reef. It'll increase the fishing industry because in the Gulf of Mexico, when they increased the number of platforms, the red snapper was almost extinct. And now it's the major supplier of red snapper in the United States. There are so many economic and ecological advantages to offshore drilling that people just don't want to listen.
Well, no, and it's mainly because of the media. I worked in the House of Commons, the equivalent to your House of Representatives in Canada, and they were just completely following the press. It's interesting because I found a research paper from Sweden, and I was showing some of the representatives, and I was showing them that, look, it's not actually worth recycling glass because, after all, it's just made of sand, and if you throw it in the landfill, it just grinds back into sand eventually. It's actually cheaper to not pick it up and clean it and everything. It's cheaper to just make new glass. And my boss said to me, because I was working for one of the representatives, he said, when I see that on the front page of the Globe and Mail, then I'll say it. So I mean, they're just completely driven by the media, and that's the big problem. In fact, that's when I realized, well, I had to get out and somehow influence the media, because the politicians are just going to follow whatever the press says in most cases. So thank God for talk radio. I mean, it's very difficult. You simply cannot crack a lot of the big media. They just won't let you in, and doesn't matter how stupid their stories are, and no matter how many facts you have, they're just going to cut you right out. So yeah, talk radio, I think, is crucially important.
Well, I thank you for that. Go ahead, Curtis.
What are your thoughts on nuclear power plants, and do you think we should be building more in the United States, and how would that impact our climate issues?
Well, the nuclear power industry would have you believe that we just have to switch to nuclear and we'll stop climate change. And so, it's funny, that's their official line. Many of them unofficially, when I talk to the scientists I've had, I used to work with professors that were nuclear power experts. They just laughed. They said, oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, there's lots of good reasons for nuclear power in parts of the world, but stopping climate change is certainly not one of them. I think that the big issue with nuclear power is that we have to have proper waste disposal, and I'm a supporter of nuclear power, but I'm also a supporter of proper deep storage. You need geologic storage. If you're not putting it deep underground, then indeed they're not only hazardous to the local community, if there's leakages, but there's also a possibility of terrorism. So I think that what you really need to make nuclear power safe and viable is to have deep geologic storage. But of course, people are scared about that, and yet deep geologic storage is very safe. I mean, you have to remember that in reactors like the ones we have in Canada, the CANDU reactor, you can hold the high-level waste is what's really the problem, the high-level radioactivity. It's, things like gloves and equipment, which is low-level radioactivity. Yeah, they may be radioactive for 1 million years, but they're never very dangerous in the first place because they're low-level radioactivity. The dangerous things are the cores, the actual fuel bundles. Okay, and a fuel bundle in a Canadian reactor can be held in your hand after only 400 years. 400 years, that's nothing if you're putting it in a geologic formation that's been stable for millions of years. So that's where they have to go really next, I think, in nuclear, is get the deep storage going and continue it, because I know there's some going now, but they have to get it down there, because nuclear, I think, is also a very valuable source. And of course, I'm biased because we're a major source of uranium.
Well, it's funny because Harry Reid fought to take any nuclear material out of Nevada, and they're attempting to ship it over here to a Savannah site. And unfortunately, what people don't realize is that it's on a fault line, whereas the site in Nevada is not on a fault line. So we have been fighting them, saying this is not the appropriate place for it. I mean, the plant was originally here to, degrade the uranium, so it could be sent to a landfill. Yeah. It was never meant as a storage facility. And now they're going to be dredging for a major port right in the same area. So this is going to be a nightmare unless we stop it. And that, you're right, the storage is the very same thing, but politics plays into it. And you have someone as powerful as Harry Reid that stopped using the area in Nevada that was used for decades for good, solid storage with no problems.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line on any energy source is there's no free lunch, okay? All of these energy sources produce pollution. I mean, that's just a fact of life. And so what you need to do is you have to choose your energy sources based on the least polluting and the least expensive. And that will vary, from state to state. I mean, West Virginia is 95% coal. They sit on top of it, so obviously they should use it. But Oregon is mostly hydroelectric. So, really, Obama never really practiced his all-of-above solution, because he's trying to get rid of coal. That's an enormous mistake. I mean, what you really need to do is have a sensible energy policy. And I get the impression that Trump's advisors, since I know some of them actually, they're going to likely push him to that. I mean, he's not going to say no wind and solar. He's going to say use it when it makes sense, when it's competitive, and don't subsidize it. I mean, it has to be in direct competition with other sources. The problem now, of course, is that wind and solar can actually be cheaper than other sources because it gets so much government subsidy. But that's not fair. I mean, we need people, I always say when people say, oh, look at this, coal is no longer the cheapest source, I say, yeah, if you took LeBron James, the basketball player, and you tied his legs together and his hands behind his back, I could probably beat him. But so I mean, yeah, if you take coal-fired power and you put a million regulations on them, then eventually they're going to be less profitable and less viable than other energy sources. My point is that within reason, you just simply let them compete in an open marketplace, and you're going to get things like hydro most effective in some areas, nuclear in some areas, and wind and solar occasionally. I mean, the price at the bus bar, which is the price right at the power plant, is typically 5 times more expensive for wind and solar. So there'll be only very few occasions when they really are cost competitive. I mean, if people who are handymen want to have wind and solar, they can do it themselves. They can pay for it. I don't care. But don't charge me for a whole grid to go heavily into wind and solar. I mean, that's where the trouble lies. And so, I'm not an advocate of any particular energy source. I'm just one, let's use common sense, just like it says on your website. The Southern sense is common sense.
Oh, you actually looked at it.
That's what we have. Yeah, I got it on the screen.
What do you think about fracking? What do you think about
fracking? To me, yeah, in most cases, fracking seems fine. Most of the anti-fracking movement I've seen, and I'm not an expert in fracking, but from what I've seen, most of the anti-fracking movement is ridiculous. They take extreme cases and act like this is normal. They even create evidence that doesn't really exist. So I think fracking, if you're sitting on top of natural gas sources, that are in the rocks that you can get out, I think the bottom line is, yeah, of course it should be regulated and it should be tested and all that sort of thing. But I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't do it right beside an earthquake zone, okay, because you're not trying to instigate a new earthquake. But, I think fracking, I think it's interesting. Natural gas, like nuclear, has tried to take advantage of the climate scare to replace coal. They're often saying, oh, switch to natural gas, then you won't have to worry about as much global warming. But the thing is, they don't realize that groups like the Sierra Club actually are eventually going to try and shut down natural gas too. And in fact, it's interesting, there were major natural gas players who actually helped the Sierra Club fund the anti-coal movement, Beyond Coal. And it wasn't long before they started, the Sierra Club and others started moving over to beyond natural gas. So, these people are really out to kill all of the major energy sources. So, so you really can't pretend that somehow you're safe because they're only going after coal right now. Coal is in the crosshairs, yes, but if coal dies, then they're going after natural gas next. They'll go after all of them eventually because, environmentalists have never been much in favor of hydropower, and certainly they hate nuclear power. So, what's left? You get rid of all those sources, eventually we're just going to be freezing in the dark.
Well, I'm firing up my fireplace after this. Well, Tom, it has been so much fun having you on. I'm definitely going to get a hold of AJ and the others and have you back on very soon. Your website, which is fantastic, is climatescienceinternational.org, and they can also get you up on Twitter. Your name, Tom Harris, followed by ICSC. You have so much information on your website, and I'm going to check out the pjmedia.com articles also. I kind of missed that in my research. My fault, my bad. But
well, they only put it up about an hour ago.
All right, so then I really didn't miss it. It wasn't there because I was on the air an hour ago.
Just as you were calling, it came up, and I thought, oh, great, it's their first story right now.
So I gave you free publicity. There was so much that was going on in the chat room. A lot of people are enjoying our conversation, and they even went into the movie, remember back in the 70s, the China Syndrome, that was trying to throw a scare into everyone. But hey, you're not going to always get a 5-mile disaster or Chernobyl. It's few and far between.
Yeah, and nobody died in the 3 Mile Island accident. Nobody died. Okay, if we had disasters in the coal industry or disasters in other industries, people die. but no one died. And in fact, as far as we can tell, no one was even affected. So nuclear is still very, very safe. You know, the only, aside from things like Chernobyl, the only fatalities that you see in the nuclear industry is when people fall off scaffoldings. I mean, you know, so I mean, historically, it has the potential of being dangerous, but historically it hasn't really caused anything in the way of fatalities outside of this horrible accident in Russia.
Yeah, that's the only one. But I want to thank you again for joining us, and I'll be talking with you and getting you back on soon.
Okay, well, thanks, Annie.
Thank you so much. Tom Harris.
Take care.
Yep, bye-bye.
With the climatescienceinternational.org, and check out pjmedia.com. Excellent guest, and definitely Curtis, we're going to have him come back on real soon. But we're going to be back here. Today's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We'll be back here on Monday, and we're going to have Nathan Deal, who's going to be running for governor in Florida, and Nick Adams will be coming back with us talking about his book, Green Card Warrior, as well as other things. So we're going to have a great show coming back up on Tuesday. So I want everyone to have a happy, healthy, and safe weekend out there. Until then, I say good night and God bless. Good night, Curtis.
All right.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. Health care plan. Health care plan.
How it's gonna work, kid. You're working hard like your parents both did. Everything you earn by breaking your back, we're gonna redistribute when we make our pay tax. Hey, take it down, don't be a jerk, 'cause none deserve it better than the ones who won't work. We're gonna throw away what I owe for this boat. Use your hard-earned money just to buy a new boat. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left hypocrisy. Little big outfit for you and me. Oh, welcome to the place. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Here in the land of the not so free, party not refreshing stuff for our own cause. We got a pen and telephone to buy back all your laws. Political courageous will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, bless your place, Jesus Christ. The presence in our pockets, so it's no longer free. You cannot make a move without the NSA. Don't expect equality, respect for fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left hypocrisy. Little pink outfit for you and me. Oh, welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the new democracy. Here in the land of the not so free. Oh, oh,
This is the most transparent administration in history.
90 seconds.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you've got a business, you didn't build that.
Seconds.
Election tests to those on the day. Attorney general's lying even while on the road. Ignoring dying veterans and for the racist vote. Hey, shut your mouth, swallow your pride. What does it matter? Our